Welcome to Wrapping Things Up, the podcast where we tie up the loose ends on all things packaging so you walk away with solutions. Coming up on today's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrapping Things Up. My name is Meredith Denning, and I am here with Mr. AJ Nelson, the founder and CEO of PCKG. How are you doing today, AJ?
Amazing. I'm excited to be in Vegas. Excited to see all the machines already operating before the expo starts. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, for those who are listening or watching online, you probably can tell that our set is looking a little bit different, and you're probably hearing all the noise in the background today. We are here at PACK EXPO Las Vegas. This is actually my first time at PACK EXPO Las Vegas. You've been here before.
I have been here before.
Okay, can you tell me, what do I need to know for the next couple of days, since this is in the morning of day one?
Yeah. What I'm about to say will maybe make you feel unprepared, but that's not the goal.
Perfect.
But lesson being, come in with an agenda, know exactly what you're trying to learn, or at least kind of try to gather information around.
Cool.
Because there's a lot of innovation, a lot of technologies here.
Yes.
And you will be overwhelmed if you don't actually have a target of what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. I mean, we're at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and we're in the West Hall this year, but there are two other separate halls that are filled to the brim with other packaging companies, just like Viking Masick. So I'm really excited to check it out. I'm excited to meet new people and just have really good conversations. But today we're going to be talking about packaging trends in the packaging industry. So before we dive in to the nitty gritty, I would just love to start out with a fun question to ask you. What's your unsung hero of packaging? Basically the thing that nobody talks about but makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think depending on the feeling of the day, I think there's probably two unsung heroes. One would probably be experience.
Okay.
Experience is a big one where there's a lot of noise out there, whether it's the materials, the formats, the ways you actually can set up production and make sure that you're operating correctly at the customer level. Having people that have done it before, have seen things go wrong, or having the ability to fix things on the fly, it's invaluable.
Right.
And I think when in manufacturing, things do go wrong. So you have to be prepared there. And partnerships, I think the relationship with your vendor or your supplier, not that those aren't the right technical terms, but I think having the ability to have a partner that's helping you work through issues, whether that is you thought you were setting up something one way and it went the other way, or, you just need to know how to set up something differently because, something hits you in the face. Being able to make that phone call and know someone's there for you and not just transactional goes a tremendously long way.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Diving straight into it, I would love to just talk about top trends right now in the packaging industry. What are the biggest shifts you're seeing today in the packaging industry?
The space is, very, very old. Packaging has been around for a long time.
Right.
I think trends aren't that dissimilar each year, but I think they always come in a different shape or size. Okay. And so format being one of those. Over the last few years, a lot of black swan events are happening, a lot of geopolitical landscapes changing, tariffs becoming more and more prevalent. So because of that, I think people trying to figure out whether it's the materials that they're utilizing, helping them save some money, or the formats that they're utilizing, going from I have a bunch of coffee customers on the table here, but seeing folks that are seeing increases in rallies on the market going north of $4, they're trying to figure out where can they reduce cost. The consumer doesn't want to pay more. So you're seeing, higher luxury items coming out for single origins, LTOs. You have people going from 16 ounce to 12 ounce to 10 ounce formats in order to make sure they can still put out a premium product.
Okay.
And then because of labor and things that are going along with that, you're seeing the formats also changing where they're trying to automate their systems, trying to make sure they step away from a lot of the labeling that they're doing or a lot of the things they're doing. So formats and materials, I think, are the two traditional things that always are changing. But I would say at this time, probably a little bit more relevant than ever because of the fact that everything's more expensive. It's a lot harder to find great people to work with you and stuff along that nature.
That's fair. You kind of talked about materials and format, people going from like 16 ounce to 10 ounce to maybe even lower than that. Do you think that that is here to stay, or do you think that that's more so a short-term cost consumer trend that's happening right now and maybe won't be a thing later?
I think there's two reasons we're seeing that people are changing from going from the traditional 16 ounces that were always the smallest format. One would be cost. So I would say, yes, if things turn back around, I do think maybe it does stay here because that's where the consumer's used to and the value's there. But I do say it's not going both the same ways. There's some folks that we do have on the commercial coffee side that are actually increasing the volumes and trying to give a value to channels such as, Club or even Walmart and things along that nature where They don't want to be the other 10 ounce or 12 ounce on the shelf. They need to be the 13 ounce or the 18 ounce. And they're trying to make sure they're driving a little more value. It does come again with making sure the formats are correct and everything works appropriately so they can maintain their margins. Cool. I do think that when you see more and more direct to consumer brands changing those formats, I think they're trying to be really unique about how they're offering those. So gift packs with maybe giving 50 grams or 100 gram coffee and making sure they're giving variety, increasing awareness of all the special, limited time offerings that they're coming out with. I think that's maybe going to stay. I think the ability to have 3, 10 ounces or 3 100 grams and then having the ability to be more aware of what that brand is now offering has been one of those side effects that are coming off that will maybe stay and be really unique. I think that will maybe keep changing itself and how people are selling that or how they're going about that. But right now, I do think that the traditional 1 pound coffee is probably no longer going to be. And I think they're thinking way outside the realm there.
That's awesome. I think it's fair to say that packaging sustainability is also a major consideration. In your opinion, what would you say is happening related to sustainability initiatives?
I am happy to say, I think that over the last 5 years, it's been a lot of me trying to be anti-greenwashing associated to this. A lot of folks caring more about the logos or the JPEG that they're able to, pay for in order to put on their packaging to say this packaging is sustainable, no matter if it makes its way to landfill or whether it's good for the actual product that's being held inside. I think more and more folks are getting smart about measuring oxygen transmission rates or moisture transmission rates, making sure that is something that will be good for their product. The product is not going to go bad on the shelf. So I think compostability was a big thing we've seen in the past. I think there's many good applications for that product itself. But I think what you're seeing now is other opportunities, whether it's going to monomaterials, something that's only PE based. I have a couple options here that we're on a podcast, but I brought some samples to show. So I think shifting to getting something that actually works properly and effective on your machines will keep your product safe is kind of more important than just making sure you have a BPI logo sitting on a packaging you're offering out to the consumer. So I do see that changing a little bit, but I think getting smarter about the carbon footprint that you're making also. So measuring how much plastic is being added or how much material is being utilized. So trying to be not a one size for everyone in the coffee industry. You can see there's many sizes that are on the table in front of us. Reducing and not having too much empty headspace that's in your packaging. Even down to the valve, we have some partners on the degassing valve side that are trying to get thinner with the valves and reduce how much plastic's there. So I think the ability to not have single-use plastic or create a circular economy, understanding that barriers are really important for the efficacy of your product. I think those things are where the shift is happening on sustainability, where obviously, if something can go into your backyard, you can put it in your home composter and it will disappear. That'd be fantastic. I would love to make sure everyone has that. But that material has its own shelf life outside of the product that's going inside. So it's not made for everything. So I see, that's a big shift that's happened where I think 5 years ago, a lot of folks had a very close to bioplastic based packaging offering that they realized that product gets brittle over a temperature change. And that ends up not being so good for the product inside.
Of course. So obviously, you brought a lot of coffee examples with you today. Thank you so much for our viewers on YouTube. Unfortunately, our listeners won't be able to see that, but that's okay. Coffee has been one of the categories really pushing recyclable pouches and valves. How have you seen coffee influence broader packaging trends in particular?
I think coffee has been having a great relationship with making sure they're pushing the innovation associated to packaging, whether it's the materials, the formats, and even making sure you're keeping in mind the aggressive nature of some of the things that you're dealing with on the coffee side, sometimes flavor profiles, when you're adding alcohol-based flavors and you can worry about what that actually does to the laminate itself, how safe you're keeping the actual product that you're investing in and that you're so proud of, especially the coffee market. A lot of folks are very, very proud of how they're creating their product. They have to start taking into consideration. It's not only about being the organic or being what looks to be the most sustainable product on the shelf with that logo anymore. They've learned their lesson associated to really taking into consideration what their packaging formats will be, what the shelf life of their packaging itself is. When you're thinking compostable and where a lot of them have gone, that packaging could actually degrade over time or actually change how effective it is when you're trying to utilize the zippers or when you're sealing it or the discoloration that you're seeing on bags that maybe some people are going transparent. So really thinking about the barrier, really thinking about things like the accessories or the accoutrements, as we call them internally. For example, the valve that's going inside. When you have a product that some folks are trying to go as close to roast to cup as possible, the degassing period or not using nitrogen in order to make sure you keep that freshness. You put out a product that has not been tried and true, that bag could fail, the valve could fail, or at the same time, the zipper could break off, the discoloration could happen, the barrier's not there, the coffee's not as fresh as you want it to be there.
The whole thing.
So as you see it and as you think about what you're getting on the shelf, it's really nice if you're putting out a compostable product
Yeah.
Or it's really nice if you're putting even out a recyclable product, being conscious of the shelf life on both the packaging itself
Yeah.
and at the same time how it's going to keep your products safe inside.
Yeah.
Those are two things that I think coffee's been having to be very conscious of, especially as we see the whole entire notion of getting large commercial customers to be less prevalent inside large big box stores.
Sure.
And you see a lot of the specialty or a lot of the smaller folks, being local and in the Whole Foods of the world.
Yeah.
They can't beat 3-month shelf lives any longer.
Yeah.
Right. From distribution center or from sitting on the shelf, you need to be closer to, above the 9-month mark. I like to say around 12 months to be safe there.
Yeah.
So it's really pushing the limit to where they've had to see where they're going with that.
Wow, that's really interesting. In a recent conversation that we had, you described packaging as a Venn diagram of trade-offs. Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah, definitely. I sit with my team, whether it's our engineers or our account managers, all the time thinking through the projects that they're taking on and hearing what the customers are thinking about. And across the board, think about a Venn diagram. Sometimes you think about 3 circles that are coming together. It is a little bit more complicated than just 3 circles.
Sure. We would love for it to be 3 circles.
We would love for it to stay at 3, but everybody always has multiple different things to think about.
Okay.
And you definitely see that from an organizational side on the larger company side, because then all of a sudden you're dealing with the procurement team that's trying to make sure that they're getting the best value out of what they're getting from you.
Okay.
So you definitely see that cost is a big indicator, especially as everything's going up. Then you start talking to the production team, and then the efficacy of how that's going to work with them is a big one. So some of them are hand filling and some of them are using machines and we are talking a lot about pouches when I say that. So I would even say when you start moving towards the roll stock formats or even on the cartoners that are running today, thinking about how that's going to run on your machines or how your team's going to be able to utilize that is a big thing. You can't just buy the thing that works best for price point and also for how it looks on the shelf. If it doesn't work so well and it's not efficient for you in your plant, that's going to be something you have to think through. And so I would say size is a component there. Materials are components there that they have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Then the actual efficacy of the packaging when it comes to the things we've already spoke about in this conversation a little bit, which is, the shelf life of how that's going to protect it or the barriers that are needed. And then you start going to things like the merchandising teams on some of the larger that they're thinking through, where it's like, yes, this new flat bottom would be great, but we've been working with a gusseted pouch for the last decade in a lot of the stores that we've been in. Yeah. So how do we go for something that's like 80 to 90 millimeters wide to 125 millimeters wide?
Yeah.
And that's pretty technical. You can visualize there's a difference there. But when you're looking on a shelf and you see a customer has 5 products showing or only 3, if you increase the size of that, either way, it's either you're going to have less product going backwards that you're able to load on the actual shelf, or you have less SKUs that you could put on the shelf. And those are massive impacts that happen. So when you start thinking about all of the trade-offs, right, you really need to have a team that comes together and communicates and actually understands what are we trying to achieve here.
Of course.
Right. And that's something like we are okay with being, only three SKUs on the shelf, as long as we're now all of a sudden helping out, making sure that we're the most sustainable and best product on the shelf. We're able to minimize our costs.
Yeah.
But more times than not, I would say that you don't really want to change too much. You want to get better. So the thing is being able to come to somebody and be like, this is what's going to make you more efficient, right? It's going to make your team work better. Or at the same time, it's going to look better on the shelf.
Right.
These are usually the winning components that come out of it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you really have to think through every single angle of that, because you can't just change it overnight. There's a lot of things that will be affected based on that.
You're kind of answering my next question, but I think it's still important to ask. How do you personally help brands prioritize all those things that you just talked about, the importance of shelf appeal, machine compatibility, sustainability? When all of those things are competing, how do you help a brand prioritize all of those things at once?
We try to make sure we understand the stakeholders that are involved. We have some partners that use great packaging suppliers that are not us. So I don't want to say we're the only ones that do this. Yeah. But the difference between a great partner versus a vendor is your partner should not have you just sign artwork and produce something that they're selling to you as the simplest way I can call that out.
Yeah.
I think asking questions, making sure you understand holistically what is trying to be achieved here.
Right.
I think those are big ones, because we get all the time someone reach out and they're like, hey, we're just looking to see if we get a better price, or we're looking to see what you can offer us here.
Yeah.
But the question really is, what are you really trying to achieve?
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what are your needs? And that comes in many different aspects, all the way through to some of the components that we offer. Some customers want to go to a format that maybe the higher MOQs come out when you try to do that. Our ability to think through better models associated to giving you storage models or different models that allow you to buy a little bit higher volume, but make sure you have the better product that comes out is a big piece there. I think asking questions like, do you understand what an OTR, MVTR are, oxygen transmission rate or moisture vapor transition rates? A lot of customers don't A lot of them don't know how that translates into shelf life, and that's not a problem, but we've invested in labs in our own factories to make sure that we can give you that data set. We understand what you're needing there and what barriers you should be asking about. If you have at least the high level, we need 12 months. No, we need 24 months. If you can give us some of that, our ability to kind of guide you will hopefully tell you exactly what we would recommend.
Right.
Based on making sure you have the right stakeholders involved, should allow you to know, okay, we've asked the right questions. We know that we're filling this on our automated line. We know that these are the dimensions and the materials that we need to run on that. We've actually been asked to qualify properly before we just deliver final goods to make sure it runs properly on the machine before we actually go about that. And making sure that we understand that the barrier in this is going to allow us to have the shelf life that we're needing.
Right.
So they can confidently go out and make sure that their sales team or their partners are going to be able to deliver something that is not going to fail or not going to have something that's going wrong. So I think asking a question, pushing back a little bit and not just taking in an order is our job.
Right.
The ability to make sure you have the right stakeholders involved from the customer side is really important. So everyone has a voice that really matters.
Yeah.
Getting the best price and the best looking thing. Usually you'll get a call 3-6 months later and be like, something's wrong. We try to minimize that as much as possible.
That's good. Talking about looks within packaging, I would love to kind of talk about the innovation in design and material that maybe you've been seeing. Specifically, what is trending in packaging aesthetics that you've seen so far?
Over the past couple of years, we've definitely seen a big shift going from like organic colors or utilizing organic looking materials to actually utilizing proper materials that are sustainable, but still making sure you could stand off on the shelf. Not everyone can see on the podcast right now, but I brought out a couple of things on purpose here for this exact moment. I think what we're seeing is specifically there is when you're looking at some of the traditional materials that you might have out of some of the customers that need to maintain big shelf life, such as my Orga here. It's a 4-ply material, foil based, that will keep the best shelf life, will operate the best, and will have no issues when you're thinking long term. This is going into Costco, so really being thoughtful of that. But when you start looking at similar types of colors and things, when you see Sparrow sitting here, this is a monomaterial pouch only made out of polyethylene, and we're able to achieve things that are full color and looking as vibrant on the shelf as you can imagine. Color is not limited by the sustainability any longer, and making sure that educating the consumer, making sure you have recyclable logos and things like that is as important. Building out programs, QR codes, store drop-off, since recyclable is not really nationwide or statewide right now to do curbside, but having the ability to make sure the materials are right. So you definitely see a big shift going on where it's not only about the material looking like it's sustainable, but making sure you're using something that's effective. I think not having to only use what's fully printed pouch or fully printed product any longer, where you're seeing customers of ours like Onyx Coffee Labs that's on the table here. It's more transparent with a single color. This is a uniform pouch. It's going to be used for all of their SKUs that they're putting out, where they're able to maximize on the economies of scale when they're thinking about their budgets. But at the same time, there's a limited amount of ink and wastage that's going on for how many changeovers us as the manufacturer is going to have to do. So it's helping out in a sustainability approach that you might not see downstream, but it is fully effective upstream. And at the same time that Onyx, and you may have seen this before, but Onyx is then taking these and putting these in a very, very beautiful outer carton. That's making sure the value is there, right? When we're using soft touch varnishes and embossing, and then they're in some of their special edition LTOs, we're doing foiling and other types of finishes that can really make sure that value is there. Being able to only give 10 ounces is something very special. Making sure it is truly sustainable, recyclable inner, right? FSC certified board, which is the Forest Stewardship Council that you're offering. So full traceability where that's coming from, that paper. You can be really sustainable. Make sure you're maximizing on the materials that you have to buy higher MOQs, utilizing lower MOQs on the dynamic nature of the cartons. You're seeing a lot of folks starting to go that way, so they can demand higher rates associated to what they're selling to the consumer, minimizing how much impact they're having to the actual environment by having to create so many different SKUs or labeling components that are going and driving value where the consumer is not sitting there thinking, oh, I'm getting something that is less product inside, almost like a collectible at some parts. I would say most people like the Apple box coffee packaging now. There's probably a lot of people out there that are saving a lot of these things. They're really proud of what they're buying out there.
How does automation shift packaging design itself, not just the process of making it, or at all? Does it affect the packaging?
I still go back to the first question you asked here, which was who's the unsung hero? I think a lot of things you can do that we've been talking about this whole time and still automate. Understanding the machines that you're using and understanding the materials that you're using goes a long way.
Yeah.
You know, we're utilizing very specialized materials here. I think we try to showcase that to our customers, where in cases, some of the time when we know someone's running something in a certain way, we might actually change the recipe of the polymers or the materials that we're using things like low SIT, sealing initiation temperature, level of recipes, because of the fact when you're doing automation, things are go real hot, go real fast.
Yeah.
That's not the thing that you're looking at when you're going sustainable.
Right.
I say that because folks that we're working with together, like Onyx or like Topeka, they're going and shifting towards, the Viking 4SC or even on the 8 station that you have.
Yeah.
That's an automated process. But in order to be sustainable, you have no more human component where making sure how long you're going to, seal something or what the temperature you're going to, you have to make sure you're tweaking it appropriately.
Right.
Where we are running fully recyclable on automated machines.
Yeah.
So the most important factor, I think, is the format or the dimensions and sizes when you're going to automate it. The machines do have limitations. Right? A human going to a band sealer and being able to seal the top of a bag, they can figure that out most times just by being, careful. When you're running something in an automated line, you only have certain parameters you can play with.
True.
We're on a podcast and I keep showing visuals,
No,
so I'm
okay.
happy we're recording it. But one of the biggest things when you're thinking about these pouches, I have Onyx and Down East sitting next to each other here. They look kind of similar when you're looking at them, but when you look at the overall packaging itself, there's some things that make it work. One of those biggest things is how big these gussets, when you're looking at the corners here, how big these are going to be, because when you're looking at it on the Viking, we've noticed you need around 45 millimeters or higher in order to make sure that can run properly.
Right, correct.
This Down East bag will not run like that.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you look, the Onyx bag will, and you'll have to believe me on the podcast, but the thing that we have to think about there is making sure the size is correct. So it's not only height, it's not only width, but it's also depth. So in these cases, we played with the side gusset to make sure we open that up a little bit to allow that automation to occur. All right. So really thinking through not only the materials and how fast you can run the line, the coefficient of friction, making sure suction cups and things are actually working correctly and grabbing the actual pouch, or how fast you're actually running when you're running on a form and fill. I think these are big components, but also making sure that the die line being used for what you're going to put there is accurate. The expertise that's associated to that, knowing you have enough space to make sure that you're able to fill properly, your cone size.
Yeah.
Making sure the right team, the right stakeholders are there is always important.
Absolutely.
It's all solvable. It's just measure twice before you cut that one time is the biggest point.
Kind of continuing that conversation in coffee. Coffee brands face unique demands when it comes to, like you've already said, freshness, shelf life, sustainability, sometimes all in one bag. How has innovation in coffee packaging influence broader packaging trends you're seeing nowadays?
It's a healthy place to think about when you're sitting with so much coffee packaging on the table and you're seeing there's a lot of innovation there. I would say the other markets have influenced a lot of what we're able to do in coffee.
Okay.
I think traditionally, foil-based bags have been something that when I speak to folks that have been for multi-decades into the industry, they're used to foil being the product.
Yeah.
Some have remembered the days of, craft bags that have cellophane inside them, more fresh, like out of a window or out of the truck scenario. But I'd say we're looking at what's happening across all the industries. Okay. And we're trying to make sure we're taking that and applying that to each one of our customers. Yeah. Where in some cases, I think the adoption of innovation in packaging is much more welcomed by coffee brands, more so than the vice versa. I think when we have our chocolate customers and doing things that are cold seal based or material based, or other industries, even like our snack foods, which are much more commoditized. They're trying to keep that cost low. Coffee is a much higher value that they're able to sell on. Yeah. So they're able to take some of the innovations and apply them much more earlier on as adopters than you see in the other industry. A lot of sustainability has pushed the limits on some of the partners that we have on the degassing side. We're seeing a lot of the valve companies. Previously, a few years ago, you see a lot of people in the customer side putting on their social media or telling their customer, you have to remove the valve before you compost this or before you recycle this. Yeah. A lot of those components are now fully recyclable. They've made fully recyclable valves at this point made out of PE. I think looking at this Honest bag in front of you, a product that we use a lot for our frozen food section, we've decided to utilize for coffee packaging. So on the side gusset here, windows are not new in coffee, but you could see that there is transparency on the side gusset here, where we've tested it on 2 different products where we're using stuff for frozen foods like Alox PET or EVOH PE in order to do the same type of thing, which those are components that are added to either the PET or the polyethylene that's allowing them to increase the oxygen barrier, or components that would be allowing you to remove foil.
Right.
And so those are very expensive materials where when you're sitting in the frozen section, and those are high value products as well, a lot of people have used them to take that into chips or things like that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of value there, but when you take that into, 10 ounces of coffee, we're able to apply really cool innovations to bring to life things that we're dreaming about on the design side, which we spend a lot of time with.
I love that. That's awesome. How do packaging materials shift based on sustainability goals? Since you kind of touched a little bit on sustainability, what's possible now that wasn't before?
Traditionally, when you were trying to go sustainable on coffee bags or coffee film, a lot of the options there were not tried and true. And there were a lot of people trying to test compostable materials. Form and fill machines were able to run them, but the efficacy of running them on the machines, having to slow down the machine. If you slow down a machine 20%, but you're able to be sustainable, consumers might be like, that's worth it. If you own that plant and you realize you're running 20% less efficient, that's a massive red flag, and, that's causing a lot of the team to try to think through, how do we address that? A lot of the innovation that's come through that is we've graduated now to go towards monomaterials, being able to graduate past just traditional polyethylene to multi-directional polyethylene, which is called MDOPE. That allows us to actually have a much higher quality, less defects, and more evenness that's going on in how that actual polyethylene runs. So the machine will run, the sealing will run better. And then having the ability to actually innovate on the sealant layer, where on our polyethylene bags, we have one that's a 3-month shelf life that we say, and one that's up to 12 months. The way we've done that is we've introduced ethanol vinyl, EVOH, to our PE, allowing it to have an oxygen barrier. So that when you're thinking about it, that innovation has come a long way. It wasn't not there a few years ago. It was just not prevalent in the way that you're able to get enough people to lower the cost when utilizing it. So it was either way too expensive or driving an inefficiency on the lines. I think seeing people put ultrasonic sealing mechanisms on their lines now, more Teflon wrapping of things, that allowed them to run the machines at the same efficiency without having to actually have melting or having discoloration happening on their packaging. So I think more people adopting it have made it so it's more available. More innovation happening with the recipes we're able to do. Making sure the barriers are there means it's a real viable solution. I don't know if we're at a point that we can remove plastic from the ecosystem the way that everyone's goal is. Even us as a packaging supplier, I'd like to remove as much plastic as possible. It's more allowing it to have a different life than just end of life in the landfill.
Of course.
Circular economy, running properly on machines so that the actual profits of these bigger companies that are trying to be efficient, they don't have all of a sudden the boardroom to explain why they're only able to output 80% of what they did the previous quarter. Those answers are starting to be answered now. So I think the innovation is finally catching up and more people are utilizing it. So I'm excited to see where the next couple of years take us.
Kind of to shift our conversation a little bit, I would love to talk about machine and automation trends. We're kind of going all around a little bit, which I think is great. How are the trends and innovations impacting machinery needs right now?
I've seen a lot of innovation in the machine space, and it's really exciting. I'm even seeing some of our customers really having fun with 3D printers themselves and adding components to their machines because they're as excited about where some of this is going. I see a couple of different things. I think we have been seeing a lot more machinery that is allowing folks to allow their product not to be the traditional gusseted or stand-up pouches on the line. Flat bottom being a premium looking product sits very well and stands up well on the shelf. The ability to not have to hand fill those and now turn into, we're running certain machines with you guys up to, 15, 17 bags per minute on a 4-station. I'm seeing over 30 bags per minute on some of the larger format on a flat bottom. A lot of our form and fill machines that are running roll stock are running 32 bags per minute. So, all of a sudden we're going to a spot where you're almost fully automated on the filling side. Where you just have to be really smart about how you set that up, where you're able to keep what looks like a specialty coffee product, where we have customers that are doing volumes for Costco that are able to not see any inefficiency there. I think the same thing goes for traditionally, you saw a lot of labeling happening because of the ways that things are going. I think the innovations that you're seeing on the machines for either labelers that are allowing that to automate, but even inkjet printers or other types of thermal printing that's happening on the line, allowing encoding to look almost as good as what we're printing to make sure that you can actually code at a proper level is a massive innovation that we're getting to see, all the way through to some of the machines that we're getting to see and how they're making sure they're adding more components and making sure that the shelf life and things are staying, minimizing the oxygen that's being reduced out of what's getting packed inside. It's really exciting stuff. So I think where I'm seeing machines innovate, I think we're past the point of just making sure it's running faster.
Right.
I think now it's running faster, but also being able to apply to what that business is. So massive amount of dynamic ability where you're able to add that, or the ability to actually run formats that traditionally were, human beings having to do that. A lot of that now is they're focused more on the other portions of the business that they don't have to focus on how these are getting filled in and put into cartons at the end of the day.
Yeah, super cool. What challenges arise when new packaging formats hit a machine?
First challenge that I see that we've made a massive rule internally that we don't allow this to be the case, even when setting up for some of PACK EXPO and some of the things we sent to you. So if you're changing something over, we're sending you samples, right? And that could be, if you're hand filling, that sample could be as simple as, we just want to make sure you fill your product inside of it.
Right.
Just because I say it's 12 ounces doesn't mean your 12 ounces fits inside of it.
Fair.
So check it first. The second thing is, if you're running on automated lines, you have to qualify us. Even if the material says the same amount of thickness per layer or the same size, as I was mentioning before, everyone's using different recipes. Everyone's doing things different. The adhesives and things that are being used are all different. Let's just make sure that it's operating correctly. So qualifying always, because what will happen is if we use the wrong matte varnish, and not that it's the wrong matte varnish, I even hate saying that, but a different one than you were using traditionally, the coefficient of friction can be different. So how fast you can run that, how that's actually getting picked up. When you're actually running it, if you're not using a low SIT matte OPP like we're using for the two of these bags that are here, matte OPP melts at a much lower temperature. So when you're actually running that, if you put that in the machine and we didn't qualify it first, that's when we start seeing burning. We see melting. So really understanding that we're qualifying the material first. We're making sure it runs properly. And then you actually can say, let's go with it. It's not what we see a lot of customers reaching out to us trying to say. A lot of customers reach out and they're like, we're looking for a 12-ounce coffee bag. We're looking for flat bottom. As if they could just order it like that.
Sure.
I would always recommend, not everything is created equal, even if it looks that way. Always make sure you ask the right questions. Always make sure you're testing, make sure you're sealing, making sure that you're doing everything before you process that order. Which makes it really stressful sometimes because everyone doesn't think about the packaging always until it's a little too last minute. And then it's all of a sudden, how do we get this order quickly in? Where that's where things go wrong. So I think making sure you have a plan of what that transition looks like, making sure that testing went on beforehand, making sure you ask the right questions, that will minimize the risk, because it will go wrong if you don't do those things. And I always try to say it will go wrong, even though you could get lucky. You don't want to get lucky. You always want to be, you always want to be planning for what could go wrong.
In your opinion, how early in the design process should machine compatibility be considered, if that's, something that you find really important?
I think it should always start with machine compatibility and also with the production team before it goes to design. Mainly because I could share a die line based on the sizes that were shared with us. But if it wasn't tested or if it wasn't actually passed by them at all, now we mapped artwork. Now we've spent so much time making sure that's right. That by the time now that you try to run it on the machine or there is something that actually gets flagged, now you have to go through all of this over again. Now the team has to map it over, or now you have to change out how your artwork lays out. So I would recommend that, especially if you're running at all on even automated or semi-automated lines, always have the production team, always have someone that understands the machinery you're using involved. Because if you skip that step, the chances are you burn a lot of time because it's not that things can go wrong. You might reach that moment, but you might double up the work on the design side. And your designers should be focused on other things that you're doing versus mapping out artwork twice. Right? So that's I would say always start off with the machines, always start off with production, making sure you ask the right questions. Once they're like, these are the sizes, or this is the size that works, this is the materials that we know will work, we're feeling good about this. It's easier to show over a die line to make sure the artwork goes there. So I'd say it's a secondary thing at the end of the day.
Being a graphic designer myself, I completely agree with what you just said, 100%. How do you see co-development between materials and machines being designed together evolving in the future?
I have a conversation with some of your sales reps all the time about this. Where I think that there's a lot of optionality. And I don't think it's, something where you're only getting option one or option two. As we mentioned, there's many components to look at. I think there's enough use cases that we're doing right now that I can give enough options that are sustainable, that can achieve the design that your graphic designers or your designers are thinking about, whether you're trying to give metallized or holographic or foiling, even when staying sustainable, there's ways to do that. So I think where it might go is more the machine companies like Viking may say, hey, this is the machine you're getting. Here's a catalog of what you can buy, the materials that will work or the sizes that will work, versus you're buying a machine. here's some sizes, but work with the packaging company and let's try to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's anything that the machine company is doing wrong. They're innovating so fast that they haven't seen all of this as we've seen, where we're even trialing some materials that Viking's not aware of on some of the machines we're using.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the partnership that we're trying to create more and more with our partners that are creating these machines are, let's create a catalog that's tried and true.
True.
It can hit each component. Most economical, fits for this capacity. You're seeing a 15% capacity difference between origin and roast profiles, even for the same 12 ounces.
Yeah.
So if you can give the optionality, you can have 15 options that you could choose from now. No one really needs 20, right? So I think the idea is, how do we actually give not only the machine, but here's the things that work. I think that breadth can be a little bit wider, and I think that's probably where it will go. Is here are all the things that you can order from the packaging side.
That's good. Well, we're coming up on time here, but I would love to just wrap things up in a beautiful little bow for the end of this episode. What resources do you recommend for keeping up with packaging trends that we've talked about and that will come to fruition in the future?
One, definitely making sure that you come out to these types of expos like PACK EXPO with an agenda and making sure you're trying to pay attention. I think certain events could be really valuable just to see and hear what's going on.
Right.
I think stay skeptical when you're doing that, but because, data sometimes doesn't always play well in the wild. So I think making sure you understand what's happening and making sure you have the right runway in order to test and make sure you do make those decisions. But I definitely think expos are a really good spot to see where the innovation's coming. I do think that there's a lot of different design focused publications that are great to follow. I don't want to give any plugs because I'm not involved with any of them, but I think at the end of the day, like, I pay attention to the Die Line, or even the Sprudge has been putting out their design awards, seeing where those are going. Even for coffee, like the SCA has their design portion. So being able to see all the different other competitors or friendlies in your own ecosystem and what they've come out with and what they're winning awards on, I think are important. But I do think paying attention to regulation is really important as well. Knowing what's happening in your municipality and paying attention. Our California-based customers always have ever-changing things happening, whether it's the use of chasing arrows or compostability based on, the proximity to a recycler or a composter. I could show you something that's fully compostable today, but if you're a certain distance away in some of the states, and that's where we're at our nascence right now in these industries, I would stay very much focused on what's actually happening. And it's not as sexy as watching something on the Die Line or on YouTube and what's going on there, but seeing what they're saying, seeing what is going to be, table stakes for you to be able to be sustainable, and then paying attention to the market on publications that are design focused, and also looking at what your industry is doing in the design awards in the focus there. Those are easy places to start doing, but definitely rely on your partners. I'll go back to the partner. We're seeing it more than anyone else. These are just a couple of examples I gave based on what we're trying to do on the podcast. But if you're trying to do something, you had a dream of doing something that was holographic or glow in the dark or something that's tactile. We have our own suppliers from varnishes and materials that are coming to us, trying to get us to innovate. And we're looking for partners that want to innovate and push the limits. So we might be able to offer things you don't even know is available yet. Might not be out to market. So ask questions.
That's true.
Right. Don't just try to order the same thing. Don't go to your new supplier or your current supplier and be like, I saw this on the shelf. How do you do this? Dream a little bit. Dream a little bit.
That's awesome. Well, AJ, thank you so much for joining me today.
Definitely.
I hope you have a good rest of your show.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Day one, we're going to have a full day today, so I'm really excited. Thank you guys so much for listening on our podcast, Wrapping Things Up. Be sure to subscribe, check out our YouTube. We're also on LinkedIn, and catch us on our next episode.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Wrapping Things Up. Make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Stay up to date by checking out Viking Masick on social media. Thanks for watching.